recording this program, and welcome to the Teach for the Future workshop series. It's a program, um, it's a program that was initiated after a generous gift to SUNY Adirondack Foundation by Joanne and Michael Rappaport. We'd like to thank them. So today it's the part 2 of the 3-part series. The title is Push the Button, How to Create an Interactive PowerPoint for Nonlinear Learning. And a little bit about the presenters today. If you did not attend the first one, Krista Riviera is an instructor of English who is in her 2nd year at SUNY Adirondack. Krista earned her MFA in creative writing with a specialization in poetry from Adelphi University in Garden City, New York. And she received her BA in English Adolescence Education from Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York. Krista is a recipient of the Teach for the Future grant, and she has invested her time in investigating technology's presence in our day-to-day experiences, including those that take place in the classroom. On another note, Krista is a lover of the great outdoors, an important source of her spirituality, and she finds herself encouraging her students to get outside. In fact, Krista is also starting a forest bathing book club if anyone's interested in joining. The second presenter, Jill Randall, is an assistant professor of mathematics in her 10th year at SUNY Adirondack. Jill earned her MA mathematics and her BA with a dual major in mathematics and elementary education, both from SUNY Potsdam. And she recently earned an advanced certificate of study in college teaching from SUNY Potsdam as a result of the Teach for the Future grant. On another note, Jill enjoys gardening, playing with her dogs, and spending time with her family. By the way, I forgot to mention that Jill is also the 2020 recipient of the Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Teaching. So Jill and Krista, please take it over.
Thank you very much. Welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us for our second presentation. If you did miss the first one, it was focused on creating instructional videos. So if you didn't make that and you do ever have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to one of us, and we'd be happy to share some of the information that we shared last time. Today is definitely intended to be much more interactive. So in a moment, Krista's going to give us kind of a rundown about what we've done with this and where we're headed. But if you would like to kind of play along, I would encourage you to open up PowerPoint before we get started. And you can actually kind of work along with us, and we'll help you to create something fun and interactive and walk away with something today. So that being said, I'll turn it over to Krista and we'll get started.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this Monday afternoon. I know Jill and I are really excited to talk to you about pushing buttons, so I'm just going to kind of dive right in. Jill and I felt it was important to first clarify what we mean by nonlinear. It's in the title of this presentation. And so in a typical lesson plan, you have your procedures and everything is usually mapped out in a very step-by-step process, right? And there's a right or wrong way to go in the learning process. And so with the interactive PowerPoints that we're going to be talking about today, the beauty of them is that the students decide what direction they want to head in. There is no right or wrong order that the students have to follow. And so this allows for a lot more self-direction and choice, and students can really lean into the direction of their interests. So it makes the learning process a bit more individualized, in that the educational experience becomes dependent on the decisions of the learner themselves. So the other beautiful thing about this is that it encourages educators, us, to approach our topics, whatever subject matter we're trying to cover, from various angles, because you have to now create different pathways that will allow your students to still achieve those learning outcomes and those learning objectives that you have set. So it's a way to change things up. So you might, along the way, during this presentation here, Jill and I refer to our projects as kiosks. We may or may not, but if we say that, we're really talking about the mode or setting that you have to be in PowerPoint, which we're going to get into in greater detail in just a second. So you have to enable this setting in PowerPoint, and in doing so, it enables you to create all of those buttons that we keep talking about. And if you think about what a button is, right, it calls upon someone to act upon it, to click it, and it creates a response. And so through button creation, it allows for greater interactivity because students are prompted to actually engage with the slides and, again, make decisions in a non-linear fashion depending on what seems most interesting to them or what they're gravitating towards. And in that way, PowerPoint becomes responsive to the user's decisions, and it does feel a bit like a game, right? If you're clicking buttons and things are happening on the screen, it's a bit more engaging. Do want to emphasize that it's not a literal kiosk. I know when I was assigned this project over the summer, I was very confused. So it's not an actual kiosk that we're creating, but it offers that same ability to choose your direction, right? So if you've ever, for example, used a kiosk to get tickets to something or order food, right? You have choice, you can delete things, you can go back, you can start, you know, by ordering your drink at Taco Bell and then move back to the burrito section. So it's sort of the same idea that when your students are looking at the PowerPoint in presentation mode, they can make those decisions. And so, you know, Jill and I talked about this, and we do envision students engaging with a project like this or a learning tool like this through an individual device, whether that's in a computer lab or individual mobile devices. However, that's not to say that it can't be adapted for situations where maybe that's not possible. We still think this is applicable to things like group work and even a whole class activity. You know, a teacher could be up at the front with the PowerPoint displayed and can call on students to decide what buttons to press and when. So there's a lot of flexibility with this, and we hope you take away something useful from it. So Jill's now going to talk to you a little bit about the PowerPoints themselves. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so that Jill can show you her project.
Okay, so yeah, so what we wanted to do is before we show you the how, we wanted to show you what exactly you can create. And one of the very fun things for us this summer as we worked together through this program and learning these new tools was that she approached it from an English side and I was approaching it from a mathematics side, which are two very different sides of the house for sure. But we were able to find common ground and actually help each other kind of think through the process. I will be honest, when you say nonlinear learning in mathematics, it scared me big time. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And so it really took a lot of discussion and kind of playing around with things. So I'm going to go ahead and show you mine. So I designed an interactive key. Oops, that's not the right one. Sorry about that. I don't. Oh, I know what it is. I think I need this one. There we go. Okay. I'm not. Are you seeing a blank PowerPoint or are you seeing my transformation of functions?
You see transformations of functions.
Okay, perfect. Okay, because on my screen it looks different, but as long as you're seeing the correct one, thank you. So I decided that I would create an interactive kiosk based upon the idea of transformation of functions, focusing on kind of three different things. One, the basic functions that we work with I was focusing on this based on a lesson that I teach in my pre-calculus class. First, the different types of functions and the basic information that we need to know about those functions. Secondly, the different transformations that we use and how we signify those in our function notation, and then actually putting it all together. And one of the things that we were trying to do is create some kind of assessment. So I approached it with 3 different topics, I would say, and I'm going to use topics as a way of approaching it when we start creating one. But the key is you have to think ahead and really develop your concept and your ideas ahead of time, because each page will be linked in some way, shape, or form. So even your title page, you have to think about how it's going to link to the future pages. So we start with just the idea of transformation. So I'm going to show you how I would approach using this. Students can really come in here and do whatever they want with it. For me, this would be kind of an activity that would bring it all together. It would not be an introductory tool, but after I've done some instruction, this would be an activity that they could use to kind of put it all together. So the home button is always going to bring us back to this page. If I click on any of these other buttons, it's going to take me into a new topic area. So if I click on the parent functions button, okay, it takes me to this page. I focused on 4 basic parent functions that we talk about. You will notice that each of them has now their own button, which will take it into another page. So for example, if I wanted to review the square root function, I can click on my square root function. It takes me to this, or radical function, takes me to the page. And for each of the functions, it gives me the domain, the range, a table of values, and a basic function graph to review for me what's important and where I begin with that function. For each of those, I can come back now and click this button, and I use specific ones. So we called these parent functions. So I thought it was cute to use a parent, okay, to come back to the parent function page. Clicking each of these functions takes me in and gives me the information. Now from here, I can either click back home, or I could have clicked one of the other buttons to take me to the next phase. And it doesn't matter which order you do this in, the students can really play around with it. Maybe they wanted to go directly to testing themselves to see if they could do it without the review. They could have done that, but then they may have to go back and review. So if I go to here, which I used as tools because the transformations are really the tools to get to the end result, I started with a basic outline of what you can do to a function. And this looks really scary when you first look at it, and the students find it very scary as well. But I now have created a button for each piece of this function. So the negative in front, if I click on that now, it tells me that negating the function is a reflection over the x-axis. And to change the coordinate pairs, or the ordered pairs, we just negate the y. And then there's a graphic depiction as well. So then I can go back and do that for each one. So let's just say I want to go to this h. I can't remember what subtracting a number from x does to my function. I can click on it. It's a horizontal shift. Okay, it talks about the function notation. It shows the graph, and it also talks about how to change the ordered pair. So I did that for each different piece of my function notation. So now once the students have worked through this, and I know I'm going to kind of quickly, but we want to get to the how-to part. They have their parent functions and their transformations. Can you name me? So here we're actually where the students are going to put it together and test their knowledge. I did include a link to the Desmos graphing calculator. If I click that, I don't believe it's going to take you directly. It won't stay in the screen, but it goes outside of the PowerPoint, so it is a little challenging. There was no way to embed the actual calculator into the PowerPoint, but it gives the students the ability to also check their work using the graphing calculator. But if I click now a new button that was not in my other pages, a star, it'll take me to my first one. And so the students would then look at the graph and try to identify the function that is being used here and create its equation. So for instance, the student would look and see that the absolute value function was the parent function based upon its shape, that it's been reflected in the x-axis and then shifted to the right. So the students would need to take those pieces and put it together to create the function, and then they can check to make sure they had the correct equation. Once they've answered that one, they can go to the next question, and so on. At all times, I chose to always have the home button so they could always get back to the home button. So because we really want to have enough time to get to the how part, I'm going to stop there and let Krista show you her sample and how she approached this project for us, and then we'll show you how.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. Right. Can you see my screen? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so, you know, as Jill was saying, like we covered, you know, and got invested in this project in very different ways. She from a mathematical standpoint, and then, you know, me from an English standpoint. So I did my PowerPoint based on Sophie Treadwell's Machinal, which is a play by Sophie Treadwell, and it's about a young woman who leads a very unfulfilling and mechanical life. And so machinal is actually the French term for mechanical. And so that sort of became a big theme, you know, in terms of the design elements that were incorporated into my project. Because it's a play, I decided to use that opening transition where it's kind of like you're walking onto a stage and the lights are turning on. So there's a lot of cool features that you can play with in PowerPoint that can make it feel a lot more immersive and engaging for the students. So this is designed to be an introductory lesson. You know, I've taught Machinal in the past, and what I would normally do when I'm just trying to introduce, you know, the historical, thematic, and dramatic concepts, I would create a PowerPoint with all the information, kind of go through it, try not to be boring about it, but just exposing the students to that information and just having conversation about it. And it was rich conversation and it was fun, but I could imagine this being a lot cooler. And also getting the students to really take ownership over it and discover the information themselves. So I would imagine students being sent to this PowerPoint, engaging with it on their own independently, and then kind of just sharing things that caught their eye or that really interested them, and they could talk to each other about what they learned. So again, there is no right or wrong direction to head in, right? It's all about non-linear. I just realized, hold on, I didn't optimize it for video, and I don't think you're gonna hear some sounds. I apologize. Okay, can you still see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, perfect, thank you. So just some of the slides have auditory effects, like sound effects, so just want you to hear that. So let's say, you know, the students are looking at the options of things that they can click on. The great thing is that they can start anywhere, right? So let's say they're into theater and they really want to see this play come to life. They could start at this performance button and click there. It's not, oh, there we go. You'll see that I kind of had fun with the transition. So since it's performance, the curtains are pulled back. They have two options of videos that they can view on this slide, two very different takes on the play, just to give them a sense of what this play looks like when it leaves the page and is put onto the stage. Just as Joe was talking about, you know, I too have a home button. I try to put it in the same spot every time so they can't lose it. But you'll notice that I went with the gear icons just because, again, mechanical, that's the whole thing with machinal, right? It's a major theme, mechanization. So it's sort of like this subliminal lesson, right? It's ingraining this in their minds that this is a big, important theme. So if I went back to my home page, another thing I can comment on about this page and just the design elements are the colors I chose. So when I originally was creating this, I realized that when I look at the play's cover, it looks very black and white, very gray. The background I chose with the stage has like these weird dark colors and the brown stage. So I was having a hard time deciding what colors to make like my text boxes and things like that. So later on, I'm going to show you how to use an eyedropper tool. And by using the eyedropper tool, I hovered over the image of the cover, and I actually pulled out this sort of lavender color. And I decided to go with it just because I think that it speaks to, you this idea of, the stereotypical association with femininity, which is actually really important in the play. Like, what does it mean to be a woman, a female? And so that's just something, an example of how the eyedropper tool can come in handy when you're struggling to find colors to use in your PowerPoint. If I click on the playwright, you'll hear I did like a little camera shutter sound because there's going to be pictures of Sophie Treadwell. I use transition so that the images kind of flow and you can just see Sophie Treadwell in different scenarios doing different things, and they could just read about her a little bit. So that's one option there. Again, the home button brings them back. If we have students who are interested in history, right, they can click on the history icon and get blown away into the past. And here they have even more options, right? So maybe these first two gears don't entice the student, right? Maybe Industrial Revolution, World War I, don't really care. But maybe Ruth Snyder trial, maybe that catches their eye and they're like, I'll click on that gear. So here we have information about this trial and how it relates to the play, which will become more evident as they get farther along in the text. And so I put this like startling image of, Ruth Snyder, she's dead in the electric chair. It's really horrifying. Again, just trying to catch their eye and get them invested in the lesson. I put a link to a history.com page if they're interested in learning more about the Ruth Snyder trial than what I'm presenting on this slide. And they could also click this, this button right here and it'll take them to a video from the Roundabout Theater Company that talks about the Ruth Snyder trial in relation to the play. So they have an option here to return to the history tab. So let's say they decided, oh, on second thought, maybe I do want to know about the Industrial Revolution. They can click on that. But if not, maybe they're tired of the historical context. We can always just bring it back home. So the other thing, let's take a look maybe at the dramatic style. Okay, and a very dramatic reveal with the transition there. Here, this is a little bit different because I decided to put in a little review icon. So if they click on the review button, the pen is telling them they're going to have to do something. And you can explain this to your students, right? If you have certain symbols or icons that they need to understand what they represent and what they're prompting them to do, you can always just, review that ahead of time. But you'll see there's a review for expressionism here. And with this, they have a true or false option. I made buttons like this. So expressionism strives to represent the physical world through the internal world. So if I hit true, you'll see that there's kind of like a boo sound, but it's supposed to be lighthearted and just kind of comical. And I would always encourage them, if you get a rotten tomato, again, tying in with the whole theater thing, you can always try again. And, lucky for them, there's only one more option. And in that case, since they got it correct, they get a standing ovation. Bravo. But you'll notice I attempted to create a lot of consistency. So with the boo, I put like the thumbs down in red, and then the bravo thumbs up in green. So these are all like design choices that I was trying to be conscious of. If I return to the review, the students will have seen, oh, there was another question I want to try to answer, make sure I understand this properly. And you'll see that this one, I decided to make it a multiple choice question, and they can select whichever letter they want to guess, but you'll notice there are more choices. So you can really make this as challenging or as simple as you would like it to be. Obviously, true or false, it's like it's one or the other, so they know if they got it wrong that it's the other one. But you can have fun with it. So if I go back home, and they can just keep working through it. And like I said, the performance is there so that they can really see it come to life. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can get into how to actually create something like this. Like the thought process was to give you a sense of what we're talking about when we say buttons and what do we talk about with, you know, interactivity and things like that. So Jill's actually going to now walk you through how to make the buttons. So again, this is really helpful if you have the PowerPoint open so you can do this with us. And then I'll talk about design later. So Jill.
All right. Yeah, so there were really three main pieces of this big idea. And the first was just thinking about, you know, what topic, how would you approach it, and kind of planning it out. So there definitely was kind of a map for each of us before we ever got into actually starting to create the actual kiosk or project, whichever we'd like to call it. There was definitely a lot of work that came before it, and really thinking about how you want to approach it, what topic you're going to use within that topic, what are your subtopics, where do you want your buttons to lead, and so on. So that's really the first part. And like I said, it really, for both of us, was challenging to start with. And then once we kind of talked through it, we were really able to develop those ideas. I think every discipline has places that this would work differently. And some may find it easier to use than others, and so on. The second part was just how to make the PowerPoint work in this way. And then the third part was the design portion. So I'm gonna show you how to actually make PowerPoint do this in a very basic example. And like I said, if you want to open up PowerPoint and follow along, you're welcome to do so. And then as Krista said, she'll talk more about design afterwards. So I am going to now just share with you I just literally have opened up PowerPoint, and we're going to just create something that will work with buttons. The first thing that we need to do is we need to tell PowerPoint that we don't want to work with PowerPoint in the traditional linear fashion where you go from one slide to the next, but we want to use this nonlinear form known as kiosk mode. So to do that, you're going to go to slideshow, and we do have a document with these basic steps on them. So we'll give that to you at the end of our presentation. So don't feel like you have to be jotting down all of these notes and trying to do it at the same time. If you just want to follow along and work with us, that'd be great. So if you go to slideshow, okay, the first thing you're going to do is go to setup slideshow. When you do that, it gives you these options of show type. So the traditional is presented by a speaker, full screen. Then you have browsed by an individual, which is just the window, and then browsed at a kiosk. That is what will put it into this non-linear mode. So we just click that we want it browsed at a kiosk, okay, and hit okay. And as Krista said, at first, both Krista and I are like, well, where is this kiosk going to be? We don't have kiosks in our classroom. You know, I'm envisioning this thing in the mall that you walk up to and push buttons on. So we really had to kind of think about where it would be in our classroom, whether it'd be something we'd send to our students to use on their own. If it'd be on a computer, we go to the computer lab to use it, and so on. So that was something for us to overcome. So once you have done that, you want to create your slides. You do not have to have your slides completed. You just really need to have them in your slideshow and have a title. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create a very basic one, and I'm just going to put in my title, I'm just going to say sample, because this is our sample. All right. And then I'm going to insert title slides. Okay. And for the sake of what we're doing today, I'm just going to put in I'm just going to say topic. So I'm going to say topic 1. All right, and I'm going to insert another title slide. And like I said, if you, like when I was approaching it, I started with transformations, and then I had my parent functions and so on. But I'll just do 4 different ones for the fun of it today. And you can do this. And I would definitely say, it is much easier to try something like this without all the detail and, oops, wrong button. And without trying to worry about design and so on, just to make sure that it's going to work, that your buttons are going to work. Practice doing the buttons and making something that'll interact first before you try to do anything else. I'm also going to, just before I start making buttons, put in, I'll just do one for now, a subtopic. Actually, I'll do 2 from topic 1, just so we can see how you can use different buttons, and I always push wrong buttons, so I apologize. So I'm just inserting all of these pages. So if you were creating your own interactive PowerPoint and you knew what you were going to put here, you don't have to put topic, you could put actually information on them. But for me, the getting it set up so that I knew that it worked was much more difficult. So I did that first, and then I added all the design and the detail afterwards. Okay. So once we've done this, now we can start to create the buttons. You can essentially use anything you want as a button. It can be an icon, it can be an image, it can be a combination of like numbers and images. Like I use the stars and then I put numbers on them. The icons, like the little home is an icon and so on. You can use text. So there's a variety of different ways that you can approach it. And I'm going to show you how to do a couple different things. So to start, I'm just going to insert an icon. So if you go to insert, you can see icons. It gives you all these great options and they're all the same size. So you don't have to worry about aligning size, which is kind of nice. For the sample, what I did earlier, my people you guys are hanging out on my page. I just had to slide you off to the side. Anybody who's worked a lot with teaching in Zoom, it's kind of challenging where to put the actual people in your class. All right, so for my sample, I just used animals. So I'm going to insert this cat. It's going to be my topic 1. You can put it anywhere on the page. What I will show you a way in which once you've decided where it goes, it will go there every single time. So you saw in mine, I was pretty traditional and I just put them in the left-hand corner. You could, like I said, a button can go anywhere on the page. You could have multiple buttons all over. You can make it uniform, whatever you choose to do. Once you have that icon, it's pretty simple to create the button once you know the steps. So all you need to do is you right click on whatever you're trying to make a button. You will see the choice to hyperlink. So typically we're used to setting links into documents that are to a video or to another website or so on. Different in this case, you're going to pick the hyperlink, but now you're going to choose a place in this document. So rather than going to another website or a page or a new document, you're going to go to a place in this document. You will see your slide titles here. That's why it was so important that you put the titles in, is because now you can see this. So I want the cat to link to topic 1, and then I hit OK. That means that once I start my presentation, anytime I click the cat button, it's going to take me to my topic 1 page. What I'm going to do is create a button for topic 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to insert another icon. And again, it can be anything, but I really like to use the icons because they were already the same size and they were pretty consistent. So I'm going to stick with the pets. All right. And it inserts my icon and I'm just going to drag it down here. Now you will see, and these are, and Krista will get to this more later. When I drag that down, it kind of gives me these little red guidelines to show me that it's aligned. The third part of our assignment and our project really was about design, and there were very specific things that we needed to meet. So depending on your desire for making sure that they align and so on is up to you. Oh, I didn't create my button. So, and it's up to you if you want to create your button ahead of time or put all the icons in first, but now I'm going to link this guy to topic 2. So I do the right click again and go to hyperlink. And I go to topic 2 and hit OK. Now that's my button for topic 2. And don't hesitate to stop me if you have a question anywhere along the line. I don't want to go too fast or too slow, but you know how that goes. All right, so here is fish. All right, I'm going to bring that down. And again, it kind of will show me that it's aligned. I right click. Hyperlink, and I'm going to tell it to go to topic 3 and insert icon. I'll do one more. One thing that just came to mind while I was thinking, while I'm working on this, One thing that we did encounter in our class is you need to use the actual downloaded version of PowerPoint to do this. It should not be the online version. So I don't know if anybody's using the online version, but it can make a difference in its ability to set up kiosks. Okay, so now I hyperlink here to topic 4. And I'm also going to put a home button just so that we have that. So the home was an icon. I can't remember exactly where it was. It's down a little ways. You don't have to use the home symbol for your home button. Like I said, it could be anything. Krista had the gear around her, so that was cool. But I'm just going to use this as my home button. And I will put this off to the side. Okay. And I'm going to link that because it's my home button back to the initial page, sample page. Okay. So I have all 5 of these buttons set up. Before I continue, are there any questions about setting up those buttons? We'll actually test them in a moment.
Not
Okay.
exactly, but Jill, I don't seem to have the icon tab on my PowerPoint. Maybe is that because of I'm using PowerPoint on my MacBook, but I don't seem to have the icon tab.
It could very well just be a different version.
Oh, okay.
So what you can also use if you don't have the icons is you could use shapes. So like
Okay.
you could insert, let's say a star. This is what I did. And when you use a shape, you click it and then drag and it creates the shape for you.
Okay.
So you could use that to create a button as well. That's actually, I think the instructions that we had us use shapes first, and then I found these icons and it made it nice.
Cool. Okay.
Okay.
And I'll
Okay,
just
great.
add, it also, anything you basically can find through Google Images
Mhm.
can function as a
Ah,
button. So
okay.
like on my PowerPoint, all those gear icons, I actually didn't find them through the icons option. I went to Google and typed in like gear clip art or something. And then,
Okay.
you know, but even if you had like an actual photograph and you wanted that to be a button, like it could. It's just as long as you can right click on it
Mm-hmm.
and hyperlink it to the other slides, it'll work. So
Okay,
even
great.
just text boxes could
Mhm.
become a button.
Yep.
So
Great.
I don't know if that helps. I saw people are posting in the chat. So
Mhm.
if you don't have the icons, you can use literally anything that's clickable, kind of.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll show you how to use text too. And then in my subtopics, I was going to use text as an option. So what you can do now is you can see that creating a button over and over and over and over and over might be a little not fun when you have all these other pages. So if you know that you're going to like that these are your main buttons that you need, you can actually group them and paste them from page to page. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And this idea of grouping and selecting will come up again later. But if you push shift and then click on each one of these while holding shift, so you're going to keep your shift button down, okay, and then highlight them all. Once you've done that, you will notice that you have this new toolbar up to the top and you see format. If you click on that, you will see that group is an option. I can now group those 5 buttons so it's one object on my screen. Okay. Once I've done that, I can copy this. So if I click within here, the group, I've learned these new shortcut keys, and you guys may have known these for a long time, but it's the coolest thing to me that I didn't realize you could do. But to copy, you could just do Control C. You can either right click, okay, and it wants paste. It wants me to paste it. It doesn't. Oh, because I already did it. But you could just do Control C and copy it. When I go to my topic 1 page and click on the page anywhere and hit Control V, which is paste, it automatically puts that whole thing right back where it was on the previous page. It's automatically going to place it where you wanted it. So it creates this nice, consistent placement for you. If you don't want it to be consistent, you want it to be all over, that's fine. But if you want it to be consistent, you can just copy it and it will paste it automatically in the same spot. So now that I have it copied, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually skip my subtopics just so you can see what I did with my other. But now I could go to topic 2, Control V, topic 3, Control V, and topic 4, Control V, and I have my buttons in all of those main pages. Okay. So just to kind of give you an idea of what can happen. Okay. Actually, I won't do that yet. So this gives me, if I wanted to test it out now, I could go to my slideshow from the beginning. Okay, and I think I have to share it another way. Hang on. And I'll bring us back to that, but once it goes over here, there we go. So now that I've actually gone into my PowerPoint presentation, if I want to test this out, okay, I can now just click my buttons. Okay, the kitty cat brought me to topic 1. The dog takes me to topic 2. My fish takes me to topic 3. The bunny rabbit took me to topic 4. And then home brings me back to where I started. The one thing you always want to make sure is that you have a button taking you out of a page, because if you don't, it's like a dead end and you can't get anywhere. So when I first did mine, I did the title page and then I never put buttons on that one, and I put buttons on all the other pages and I couldn't get to them. Okay, so you just have to make sure that you have a way out. So having that home button is really nice to always get you back to where you started. All right. All right, so let me just go back here. So what I wanted to show you is what I did for the subtopics. So you, in mine, I had the one button to take you to transformations, and then within the transformations, they went to these subtopic pages. And on those subtopic pages, I didn't have all of the same buttons. So it's really up to you. Krista was very uniform, and she had those across the bottom, and then they took you within, and then she used the home button to get back out. It depends on how you choose to create your connections. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the topic 1 page, and I'm going to put a link or a button to get to subtopic 2, and I'm going to do it using a text box. So if I insert a text box, okay, and I just kind of put it here, and I'm just going to type in there subtopic 2 or subtopic 1, excuse me. And maybe I'm not even going to worry about all the design stuff about it. If I now highlight this again, in order to make sure that you're not just clicking on a single letter and you want the whole text box to work as your button, you just want to highlight. Oh, let me undo what I just did. There we go. You want to get in there and you want to select the entire text. Okay. And now you can go to the hyperlink, but you want to just make sure you have all of it selected. If you let's say I only select the one, it's only going to create the button on the one. So I could be pushing all over the word, but it would only work when you push the one. So you just want to make sure the entire text is highlighted. And now I can hyperlink that to subtopic 1. Okay. So I'm just, for the fun of it, going to show you what happens when you don't have a way out. So if I just go back over here to my and actually show you where I was at. Here's our title page. If I went to the cat, I have this option to click subtopic 1. Once I get in here, there's nothing here. I can't, there's no buttons. I can't get back out. So when that happens, it's kind of a dead end. So when you're creating your design, you just want to think about where, once you get in, how do you want them to get back? Do you want them to just go to the previous page? Do you want them to go home? And so on. So let me bring it back over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here and I'm just going to copy. I'm going to ungroup these for a moment, because once they're grouped, you can't use them individually. But now that I've copied them for my other pages, now I'm going to ungroup them, and I'm just going to click on this guy and I'm going to copy my home button only. And I'm just going to put the home button. Oops. As you can see, I make mistakes as well. It takes a little practice to get used to this. There we go. I should be good now. And then I could just copy my home button into the subtopic. Or maybe I didn't want it to go just, or I don't want home to be the only option. Maybe I want, if it's a subtopic of the first topic, and that was the cat, maybe I just want to copy that one. So I highlight it, Control C, and then I'll go to my other page and Control V again, and there I have just the cat. It may not make sense to have all of those buttons there, so you can ungroup them and just cut and paste the ones that you want within it. Okay. All right, so that's, and I'm just trying to be aware of time. That's a lot of stuff. But really that's the basic of creating a button. It just becomes now thinking about which buttons you want to lead to what page and so on. So before we go any farther, are there any questions? Were you able to successfully create a button? Are you guys working along?
Striving to. I'm feeling a little behind, but I'm getting
okay.
I wanted to ask, where does this PowerPoint live that you're making available to students? Is that, maybe I missed that. Was that in Blackboard? Is it in another place? Do you send it to them? Like, where does it live so that they can access it and take themselves through this process?
I think it would depend on how you're using it in class. I think it could be in Blackboard. It could be something that you've opened up in class and use it in class. It could be something that you've sent them in an email. I think it depends on how and when you're using it.
Jill, I think it's so interesting, this whole thing, because you could, it would come in so handy for a flipped classroom. You could, for example, what Krista had prepared, that a whole play, they could review the play, read, understand it, and then we could come back to class and have discussion. So whatever platform you use, let's say Blackboard, or let's say, or Google Classroom, or Google, and then you could have them put it up there and students could review it, read through it, and then you come to class and then we do the discussion. So you don't have to go through the nitty-gritty details, of teaching the whole play to the students. They could learn that themselves, study that themselves, and then we could have more substantive discussion in the classroom. So, yeah.
Absolutely,
Wonderful.
yes. It's exciting and overwhelming to some extent at the same time, like thinking about all of the possibilities and how you can do it, but it does have a lot of great abilities.
Yeah.
There was a question in the chat. Joyce said, could you just put the home button on the master slide? And the master slide is one of the things that Chris is going to talk about, but yes, once you've created that, you could just put it in your master slide and then it will show up every time you use that master slide. So that's nice. And the home button would be the perfect example of what you may want to put on a master slide. But the nice thing is just to know that once it's created, you can copy the button. You don't have to relink it every single time you want to create one.
Hey, Jill, it's Diane Bargill. Sorry that I had to be late, but so I missed the beginning. When you keep saying that there is no way to go back to a slide if it is not iconed, does that mean that in a typical PowerPoint, I can go back and forth at will in kind of the way you're doing now? So are you saying once this is completed, there's no way to do that? Or
yeah, well, so the idea is, so you were, and I don't know when you came in, Diane. So the idea is you're in a different mode. So this is done in kiosk mode in PowerPoint. So it's a specific mode that works based on these links so that you go from the linked page to the next linked page. You can't just go forward and backward. So that's a great question. In a normal one, you could just click forward, or you click the button and it takes you ahead, and then you have the option of going back. That doesn't exist in this mode.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whole idea is you're creating buttons. So instead of the clicking feature changing the slide to the next one, you have to click a button to get to a different slide. So I'm not sure if you were here for that part, but
No, I mean, I've been watching all the buttons being added.
Yeah. So
But I
it's
wasn't here for the
confusing.
explanation. Yeah.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have some samples in the beginning. So Diane, if you wanted, I can show you, we could show you ours and another time I can
And that's, yeah,
show
sure,
you
sure. Yeah,
individually
yeah,
our samples and how
yeah.
we worked them. Yeah.
Yep.
Because that
Thank
would
you.
put it all together for sure.
Yep. Yep. Thank you.
All right, any other questions about creating the buttons before I turn it over to Krista to talk more about layout and some of the fun things that we learned about that? All right, so I'm going to stop sharing and pass it over to Krista to do that part.
Okay, hello again. Okay, so I'm just gonna share my screen. Don't need this. Sorry. Okay, so one of the things that Jill and I learned over the summer was this helpful guide essentially for making intentional decisions with our design. And the whole thought process behind this is to make decisions that are intentional and considerate of our users, right? So the idea is to create a pleasurable experience, an experience that makes sense, that's easy to navigate. And I think this is really important because sometimes we think design is just about, you know, aesthetics and just visual appeal. But if you're using this to help your students be more self-directed, right, and be able to learn things more independently, it has to make sense to them, right? They have to be able to flow through the lesson without any issues. So organization, clarity, and all of that good stuff is going to come into play. So something we learned about were Robin Williams' 4 principles of design, which I have up here. One of them is contrast, which is the idea that dissimilar elements, so elements that are not the same or not like one another, should be visually different. Okay, so again, that's just kind of, again, logical, but not always something we take the time to think about. And contrast can be achieved through things like color, size, shape, and so on and so forth. The other principle of design is repetition, and that's all about creating consistency in your PowerPoint. And I think consistency adds up to cohesion oftentimes. And you want to create those trackable patterns, right? So after a while, like Jill was showing you all of the icons and stuff, the students should be able to recognize an icon and know where it's going to take them or what its function is, as long as you are being consistent, right? Third element, alignment, and that deals with the placement of the elements on your slides. So again, that should be deliberate, and the elements that you're placing on your slide should sort of speak to each other in an intentional way, right? So if certain things are aligned evenly, you know, that should mean something, whereas if they're not, if things are aligned offset and things like that, that should achieve a different effect. And then proximity has to do with you know, related elements just physically being near each other, in close proximity to each other on the page. So I'm going to get out of the presentation mode here so that I can actually start manipulating some of these slides in front of you. And so some of the most valuable applications of those 4 principles are the things that I'm going to talk about with you right now. So again, if you have PowerPoint open, you can probably do this in the same PowerPoint that you were working inside when Jill was going through the button creations, or if you want to make a new one just to kind of keep your design PowerPoint separate, you know, whatever floats your boat. But one thing I found helpful that was a very simple suggestion, simple thing we learned, was about using large images, using big images. And so if you go into Google Images, just open up your browser, Google Images. Can you still see it, by the way? Because sometimes when I shift tabs and stuff, it gets a little funky. So if I type in forest, because I love the forest, right? You get a bunch of options. And one way to narrow down the images that pop up to get higher quality images is by going to this tools option. So if you click on tools, there's a lot of things you can play with, but for now, I'm just going to talk to you about size. So if you drop down the size options and select large, that will give me images that are large, that are big. Go big or go home. So we're gonna, I don't know, I'm just gonna pick this one. And you'll see that when I copy it and put it into my slide, it's big, right? It fills up the whole thing. But the reason we like large images is because they're oftentimes less blurry, right? They're clearer, higher quality. So this is just something to consider. And again, you'll notice as I'm moving the image, those lines that Jill was talking to you about, that's indicating to me that I've centered that image successfully. So that's one option with the images. Another thing to think about is transparency with your images. So if I go back to Google Images here, I'm going to leave my large setting alone because we like the big pictures. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go where it says color, and I'm going to select transparent. Okay, and this is going to pull up some new ones, right? You'll notice that the options are more limited. However, the cool thing with the transparent images is you should see this sort of like checkerboard background, right, to the image. If I copy it and paste it, voila, it has a transparent background. So it kind of seamlessly blends into your slide. So let's say this slide's green background is really important to me and I didn't want to waste that valuable space. Maybe I want to include some text boxes here, right? Rather than waste all of it and have to worry about layering and stuff like that, I can just get a transparent image and that'll, you know, better serve my needs. So it's also kind of canceling out like the visual noise, right? It just looks a lot more pleasant. But if you have a slide where the visual noise is not an issue and you want it to be dominant on the page, that image, then just stick with the regular. So then, any questions so far?
Krista,
Yes.
I just want, Diane
Oops, sorry.
talked about being careful with copyright. So did you, you can select that in your Google search as well. Right?
Yes. So here under usage rights, under the tools, Creative Commons is, you can even go to the Creative Commons website. I've done that in the past too. But you can select the different licenses there, whatever is applicable, however you're using it. Does that, is that, sorry, I can't see the chat right now.
I was just reminding everybody to be careful about copyright because sometimes images are seem like they are free for use and they aren't always, or that there's, you know, you should acknowledge the photographer, etc. You know, but yeah, there is a filter there. It used to be easier to find free images, and the last time I tried, it was more difficult. So
Yeah, Joyce has some good guidelines. I remember sitting, attending a training Joyce did on this topic that was really helpful in terms of selecting images that are free for use, free. Do you still have that available, Joyce?
yeah, it's right there on the Google. Yeah.
No, I know. Yeah, there's a, yep. Yeah, I figured there was a resource list at the library website, the web searching resource.
There we go.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Joyce.
You know, thank you for that. That's a really important reminder. You know, we don't want to get in trouble for.
It's one thing to use it for the classroom, but it's another if this is going for an asynchronous course and, you know, et cetera.
Exactly. Yeah,
Or
that's a really good,
OpenCine, you know.
that's a good point. Yeah, thank you. So I guess I won't distribute this anywhere because I haven't checked the license, but yeah, so go big and go transparent depending on your needs. So Jill was walking you through how to create the buttons and was showing you how you can follow the red lines to gauge your alignment and things like that. But sometimes it's just really time consuming to do that. And so all this slide is showing you is that sometimes if you make different shapes, right, they're not always the same exact size. And let's say I want to put these in a line and I'm just not getting the spacing right. Like the blue one is really close to the green and the purple is kind of chilling over there. There's a really simple way to tidy all of this up. So what I'm going to do is just start with a slide with just a circle that I'm proud of. So Jill showed you that you can just go inserting the icons, but the shapes, right? Like let's say you're making a circle, it's a lot harder because you just have to think about it a little more and make sure it's an actual shape that you're proud of, right? So I happen to pre-make a circle that I am proud of. So let's say I want all of my buttons to be circles, right? So rather than trying to make 3 different circles, I'm going to just click on it, do the Control-C trick that Jill taught everyone. You can also just right-click and select copy. So I know some computers are different and won't let you use the keyboard controls for that. And then I'll do Control-V, Control-V. So let's say I want 3 buttons. Now they're all beautiful circles. They all are the same. I'm going to just fill them with different colors just for when I'm talking about them, if it helps at all. Okay, so I have my 3 different buttons or things that I'm going to make buttons, which I'm not going to go through here. The next thing I want to do is make sure that they're evenly spaced. So let's say, I'm going to just move the people, as Jill calls them, move the people. Let's say I want my buttons to span across the entire slide, right? I want them to go from where the blue one starts to all the way over here. You'll see that I could start manually trying to line them up, right? Okay, I got the middle lined up, but it's a pain, right? So what I focus on is just the total distance first, right? And then there's an easy way to do the rest. So if I wanted to go from here to here, I'm going to move my purple circle until I see that right dotted line on the right-hand side appear. And you'll notice that it's also on the blue circle, on the blue circle's left-hand side. So that's telling me that they're the same distance away from either side of the slide's border. So I'm going to leave my purple circle alone. I could start trying to manually move the green to line them all up. But what I'm going to do instead is use the alignment feature in PowerPoint, which is under the arrange options. So just like when you're selecting multiple icons, right? Jill showed you how to group them and things like that. It's a similar concept. I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to click each of what would be buttons, right? And I'm going to go where it says arrange. You could also just go to format align, but you'll notice that align is under the arrange option. So just depending on what tab you're on, it might be somewhere different for you. So if I go to align, I want them to be evenly spaced, right? I want them to be equidistant from each other. So I'm going to distribute horizontally because that's the direction I'm trying to move them in. So you'll notice that it'll bring the green one automatically centered, right? So that they're all the same distance apart from each other. Let's say that when I was doing this, right, maybe my green was a little farther up. So I'm highlighting all of them. I distributed them horizontally, but they're not aligned, right? Do you see that? Like the green one's higher. So what I could do is there's a whole bunch of options here. Since they're all the same shape, same size, right? I can just do align middle and it'll bring them all to the same level. So did we see that? It all happens so fast. But that's just a cool little trick there. And this will save you a ton of time, right? The whole idea is to not have to do this manually. And then once you get them spaced properly, that's where Jill's technique with the grouping and stuff like that will become super helpful, because then you can just copy and paste these onto all of your slides and you know that they're going to be well aligned. Okay, any questions about the alignment features before I move on? Okay, is there anything in the chat that I'm not seeing? Are we good? Okay.
You're good.
Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk to all of you about is the eyedropper tool. So I had mentioned this when I showed my Machinal kiosk and how that helped me pick out the lavender from the cover of the play, right? Which I wouldn't have thought to use otherwise. So the eyedropper tool is really neat. And what it allows you to do is pull from the colors that already exist on your slides. So oftentimes when I'm like making a slide, sometimes I waste a lot of time just trying to decide what colors am I going to use and what's going to match what. And I like this image, but how do I get that right green, right? So let's say I wanted to fill this circle with a cool color. So I can go to shape fill. There are, of course, you know, preset colors. You could look at the more colors option. There are also customization options here, but I don't know if you've ever like tried using this thing, and it's a pain in the butt. So you're moving the thing around and you try to get the exact tone or exact shade, and it's just really difficult. So let's say this is my image and I love it and I want to embrace the colors that are inside that image already. What I can do is go to whatever shape or text box or text even, right, the actual writing itself that you want to modify. I'm going to go to shape fill, and instead of choosing some of these colors, what I'm going to do is select the eyedropper. Do you see this option? So it's kind of like if you think about how it works, right? You suck up liquid, right? So it's, if you think of your images as paint, right? You're pulling a color off the image. So I'm going to take my eyedropper, and you'll notice it comes up, right? It's a little tool. Since I'm hovering on the white of the slide, do you see it says, it's that white box and it says white, okay? Even if you go outside the slide, right? It says light gray because it's pulling the colors from your screen. So if I go into this beautiful picture of the forest, oh, so many greens and tans and things that I wouldn't have thought to use, right? So here we're picking up some olive green. Here we're picking up some blue gray, right? And if you go farther up in the image, we get tans. So I can play with that, right? And I can just see the color being displayed in that little square as I'm moving. And when I find a color that I like, I can just stop moving and click, and it'll fill the shape with that color that I stopped on. So I'm just going to do it again. So eyedropper, let's say I want a darker green. I love that. Dark teal, boom. And last time, let's say I want a lighter green, but I'm having a hard time matching it. There we go. So now I have 3 shapes, which could be buttons, it could be whatever you want them to be. This is a really useful tool just for about anything, even making borders on things, right? Maybe you're trying to embrace the colors that are inside of whatever you're framing. So that's just a neat little trick. You'll also notice that I put these circles in vertical distribution. So just to show you, if you remember the align options, distribute vertically is the way that I made these buttons look like that. So just think, if you're going this way, you're going to use a horizontal, and then if you're going up and down and stacking your shapes, you would just use the vertical option.
These are very cool. Thanks.
Thank you for being here. So does that make sense? Does anyone have questions about the eyedropper tool? No? Okay.
This is great.
It blew my mind because it was so simple. I just overlooked that option every single time. So strongly recommend.
Never even knew it.
Yeah. So, and the last thing I'm going to talk about are master slides. Who brought it up? Was it Joyce who brought up master slides? Yeah. So we're going to talk about that. And this also blew my mind because I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm going to make a PowerPoint for a class, you know, I find myself using a template, right? One of the automated templates. You can't avoid starting somewhere, right? With PowerPoint. And I end up like modifying the font style of the title, modifying the size of the subtitle. In my title and content slides, this font size is like never big enough for my liking. So I'm always changing things, right? And what I used to do was do that every single time I made a new slide, right? Because even if I changed the size of this text here to whatever 54, when I make a new slide, it's going to bring it back to 28. So then I'm going to have to make it big again, right? So this is tedious, and oftentimes I know at least for me, it made me lazy at times because I wouldn't want to be bothered, right? I might just accept the smaller font at some days, right? If it's like a faster PowerPoint that I'm trying to create. Or I might overlook certain slides that I forgot to modify accordingly. So then your design gets compromised, right? The consistency goes down. So the helpful tip, sorry, Zoom controls, is to go to where it says view, okay, which I never click on. Slide master. So it's going to, when you click on that, it's going to take you into slide master view. So that means that whatever changes you make to these template slides, they're going to appear on the actual slides that you create in your actual presentation. And they're going to be consistently created in that format. So again, I'm not in my actual PowerPoint right now. I'm in the master slides. You'll notice that there's this X here for when you're done making the changes that you want to make. So let's just say, instead of I'm having a hard time highlighting Calibri Light, let's say I want Algerian, and let's say I always want that to appear a size 40. And let's say for the subtitle text, I want Arial Black, and I want that to always be size 32. Okay, you can do this for the other slides, right? Maybe on my titles, my title and content slides, I want to do the same thing, but maybe I want them to be slightly smaller. Okay, you can even edit for the bullet levels, right? So for your top bullet, the tiers, right, of the bullets that you create, you can define what font and size you want those to be as well. You could also play around with color if you know that's going to be important in your lesson, right? That maybe the color signifies something as you move down the bulleted list. Okay. And then once I'm happy with how everything is, obviously this is sloppy, but you know, once you made careful decisions, something you were proud of that made sense for what you would be using it for, you don't click save or anything. You just hit close master view. Okay. And you'll notice that it automatically changed the slides that I hadn't yet modified, right, to be formatted the way I want them to be. So if I type and type again and type again, you notice that it's, you know, keep maintaining that formatting that I had set it to. So this has saved me a ton of time, just because, again, like I don't have to go through every single slide and make those changes manually. But it also just kind of motivates me to be more consistent because it's easier, right? I know if it's that simple, I'm going to take the time to do it. So, and this also helps with accessibility, right? If you know that you chose, you know, a template that's just not going to work, like the font is not, you know, really legible, or the colors are wrong and not easy on the eyes, you can be considerate about that and make accessible choices. So that's pretty much it. And I'll also throw my guide sheet in the chat for all of you. Jill created a guide sheet about making the buttons. And I'll also put, do you want me to put the links in as well, Jill?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
we just wanted to make sure we can put the links in, but also the PDFs, just so that if somebody was not part of the SUNY Adirondack email system, that they could still access the PDFs, because if we just share the links, if you don't have a SUNY Adirondack faculty email, you won't be able to access the links. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How much you guys charge per hour to help somebody create a PowerPoint? What's your hourly rate?
There's not an hourly rate. I'd be happy to help you, Roger, if you wanted to work on one of these and play around with it.
I feel better if I'd paid somebody for all the help.
Well, I don't know. I do like coffee.
I'll take tea. No, I'd be happy to help you as well.
Yeah, because I think honestly, like I said, it really helped. I was very grateful to have Krista because we could kind of talk to each other and be like, and work through the issues. You know, when you're trying something new for the first time and it's really outside of your comfort zone. And I know I said this in the previous session, but for me, some of this, because I've been teaching for, well, this is my 17th year of teaching. Some of this was just really out of my comfort zone, but it was good to stretch out of my comfort zone. It just was hard to work through some of it. And having Krista to talk through it and work on it together and kind of review each other's work, you know, peer review was a big thing. And just being able to have her look at mine, I took a look at hers, gave us each ideas, but also help give feedback and so on. So we're happy to do that. And Krista did just put our emails in the chat as well. Feel free to reach out with any questions, or if you do want us to kind of, we can meet with you and talk through an idea, anything like that. And Diane, if you wanted to meet and I can share, you know, our samples with you, I'd be happy to do that too.
I just showed you the only techie thing I knew that somebody else, other people didn't know in a meeting recently, so.
Oh, I like
It's not like
that.
that knowledge.
Have you seen the one with the attorney in court and it's the cat? Somebody had
Oh,
done that for him. Oh, it's hysterical.
he's
He
like, I'm
can't
not
get
a
it off.
cat.
I'm not a cat, a
That is
judge, I
what it
swear.
is. I watched it twice.
This is great. This
This was great.
wonderful.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of work on the front end, but then the results would be wonderful. I can already envision, you know, a flipped classroom working great with this.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's definitely something you couldn't do for every lesson, but
No,
if you
yeah.
had the time to develop a few for each
Mhm.
semester or one a semester that you could use and then build upon that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm going to, the one that I created, I didn't use last semester because I didn't teach that course last semester, but I will be teaching it, using it this semester. And I think, you know, reviewing it and seeing how it goes will motivate me to use it again.
Mhm.
And even just some of the design things are work in regular PowerPoint too. And they were new things that just blew my mind. I had no idea. So it's
Mm.
awesome.
And I
Yeah.
think once you map out the concepts,
Mhm.
they can be more easily tweaked, like kind of
Mhm.
as you go. So I think that's really just the hardest part. But once you just devote some time to sit down and just think about where you want to go with everything,
Yeah.
kind of neat. So
Mhm.
Did have a
And-
serious question. Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, and if you know of anybody that couldn't attend because they went to the State of the College address, please refer them to us. I'd be happy to help anybody. I did feel badly that was kind of scheduled at the same time. So I know a lot of
Yeah.
people felt the need to go to that. So if anybody, you know, wants, if you share the idea and anybody wants help, just let us know.
absolutely.
And we will make this recording available for the college community. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Roger?
Yeah, I did sort of have a serious question. Going way back to this being non-linear, I was curious, thinking maybe with you, you know, if you had a chapter on the functions you're covering, or Krista, the play, would you at least expect the students to, let me use Krista's a little easier maybe, to have seen or read the play before they went to this kiosk, or maybe look over the chapter, Jill, at least before they immerse themselves in the kiosk? Maybe not, maybe.
So I think it's dependent on the objectives of that lesson, right? So the lesson that I showed with the Machinal play, I saw that as like an introductory lesson. So I wouldn't
Mhm.
have expected them to know anything about it. And I would have, the only expectation I think I would have had would be to require them to click on a certain number of buttons from the home screen, just so I know that they're getting a variety, right? You didn't just watch the performance, you also learned a little bit about history. And like if I say, you know, make sure you navigate through two to three buttons, right? And then group them, right? And just have them talk about what they learned. That's kind of how I imagined it, just getting them talking about information
Mhm.
that is centered on the play that they don't yet realize is necessarily centered on the play, but will make more sense as we go. But yeah, like I know people could use it for review, right? Things like that, even tests, like stuff like that. So yeah, Jill, I don't know if you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that for me, I was definitely thinking of it. This wouldn't be introductory the way I created mine. It would be more of an activity to kind of pull it all together. I think it would depend. You know, a lot of folks talked about creating like handouts to go along with it. So maybe they would have something they were doing while they were working through the kiosk. I think it really depends on where you're using it in your content and what your goal is. You know, I think like Krista's topic, it was more this overarching play, but then they could look into something more specific and really focus on one portion of it. Mine was more, you know, different in terms of you're putting these things together. I think it really, you know, can be used in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and you can.
Sorry.
No, sorry. Go
I
for
was
it.
just going to follow up on that kind of question. You really can't track clicks through, as it were, or what students achieve. So really it's direction in advance of using it to the students as to what the expectation is as to what they complete. And or I really like your idea of a like an activity or like a worksheet that they're completing based on what they do once they go through that, so that you know that they've completed it. So I guess that was what I was curious about, was the sort of tracking use, but it really will come down to their ability to discuss it or accomplish an activity on paper, or you can't track quiz outcomes in this. It is very self-directed. Okay.
I think you needed to like define its purpose very clearly, and then, you know, I think it is smart to have some kind of follow-up, just to kind of hold them accountable and be like, okay, so tell me what did you learn? And even though it's a self-directed process, I do think that sort of assessment, even if it's informal, it's important.
Yep.
And it's super layered, right? Like the PowerPoint, you could do videos. I'm even realizing like you could link it to Google Classrooms. So, you know what I mean? Like it could get really complicated depending on what you're doing. So, but in a good way. So I think there's a lot of ways to adapt it.
And we were even talking about how you could even, like our next presentation is about creating instructional websites. So you could even embed something like this into your instructional website. So there's a lot of ways, and it's just kind of fun. Honestly, at first I was so angry about doing this, to be honest. I was like, how is this going to work for my students? I teach math, for goodness sakes. And I know I push myself outside my comfort zone. It's good for me. But I was like, oh, and we were so stuck on this kiosk idea of what is this? And so, but once I got going, I was like, this is so cool. And it was so fun once I realized what I was doing. And so it's awesome to see what's out there and what other people are doing. I know it was enlightening for me.
It is really rewarding to see the final product. And you're like, oh, I can do this. Oh, so just hang in there. If it feels tedious, it is, but in the end, it's really cool. So.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you so much.
Thank you so much. This
Thank
was
you,
great. When's the
everybody.
next one, Jill and Krista? Yvonne?
The next one is on
The
March
next one for
29th.
these two.
March
Mar-
29th, Monday at
Monday, March
12:40 p.m. again. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's making it click, how to create an instructional website for linear learning. So another interesting topic. Excellent.
So appreciate everyone
Mhm.
Yes.
coming out today. Thank you.
Thank you
Sorry I
so
was
much,
late.
everybody. And then
Thanks.
please be on the lookout for the announcement for the next presentation. Thank you. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care,
Thanks,
everybody.
Jill.
Thanks,
Krista.
folks.
That was great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.